Now, you just finished the unit on what your role will be as a paraprofessional, and I want to invite you to revisit that unit at any time, because understanding your role and your responsibilities and your ethical obligations as a paraprofessional will ensure that you do the greatest good for the children you're working with, as well as avoid any preventable mishaps. Now, earlier, you learned that applied behavior analysis, or ABA as we say, is a science that tries to understand and explain and improve socially significant behavior. And remember that socially significant means behaviors that are important and will improve the day-to-day lives of our students. But what do we mean by behavior? Well, behavior is simply what people do and say. Put another way, behavior refers to a person's actions, and it can come in many different forms. Importantly, behavior, or at least the behavior that you'll be concerned with as a paraprofessional, is observable by two or more people. We can see it. We can hear it. Now, if we can see it and hear it, we can also describe it. We can also record whether or not it happened. And that's something that we're going to take up in much more detail in the next unit. You also learned that the procedures used to improve behavior need to be very precise. Well, as part of being precise, behavior specialists are very careful about how they define the behavior that they're developing or changing. For example, a skill like imitation, it's a behavior. But before you can teach a student this skill, you must know exactly what it should look like when it's performed correctly. And that's what this unit is all about. Observing behavior and determining whether what you saw matches the definition of the behavior that was provided to you. So in this unit, we're first going to work on understanding definitions of behavior, and then you're going to get some direct practice matching behaviors that you see to those definitions. So let's jump right in. Now, we already talked about what behavior means. Behavior refers to a person's actions, that is, what they say or what they do. Behavior can be observed, described, and recorded. But what behaviors of a child we're working with are we really talking about? Well, we don't observe and record everything that a child does. And so this is where the first important term comes in. You'll be working with target behaviors. Target behaviors are those behaviors we're trying to change or teach. They're the behaviors of interest to us for treatment purposes. Well, like what? If we want a child to name the picture of an apple when we show it to him, then the child saying the word apple is the target behavior. And if we're trying to teach a child to, say, make eye contact with you when you say, "Look at me," then eye contact from the child is the target behavior. Well, let's stick with the eye contact example for a moment and talk about it as a target behavior. Suppose I want you to teach this target behavior to the child. Eye contact is something that a child with autism often has trouble with. So I have you sit down with the child directly across from you, and you're going to say to that child, "Look at me." Well, your job would be to write down whether or not the child did the target behavior when you asked him to. Does that sound simple enough? Well, not entirely. You first need a definition of the target behavior, and that brings us to the second term we need to discuss, operational definitions. An operational definition of a target behavior is a detailed written description of precisely what the behavior must look like in order for it to be considered as having occurred. Operational definitions are not written by you. They're written by the behavior specialist in a way that makes the most sense for what the specialist is trying to accomplish. Your job will be to determine whether the behavior you observe does or does not meet the written definition. Operational definitions should be objective, clear, and complete. This means that a good definition can be handed to a complete stranger and, based on the written definition, that person could tell you if the behavior happened or did not happen. Each definition also includes the actions that are not part of the behavior, and that'll help you figure out if what you saw the student do is in fact the correct behavior. Of course, before you actually take data, the behavior specialist will thoroughly review the definition with you. Now, to help you understand the importance of good operational definitions, let's define making eye contact. I'm going to define it like this. Making eye contact is defined as the student's eyes meeting yours. Now, is that a good definition? Actually, it's not. And a good behavior specialist wouldn't write a definition like this. Why? Because it really isn't clear or complete. It says nothing about how long the child should keep looking at you, how soon after the instruction is delivered the child should look at you, or what other boundaries define the behavior. So here's a better definition. Making eye contact is defined as the student's eyes meet the teacher's eyes within 2 seconds of the instruction. The student maintains the contact for 3 or more seconds, and the student's head and body is oriented directly toward the teacher. This definition is much more precise, and it should make your job a lot easier. Now, in the next segment, I'm going to take you through a lot more examples that'll help you become more familiar with reading operational definitions and matching observed behavior to those definitions. Well, let's do a little exercise. I want to take some target behaviors, operationally define them, and then I'm going to show you some video clips. The video clips represent either a true example of the target behavior, according to the operational definition, or a non-example, that is, behavior in which one or more of the features, according to the definition, are not present. Okay? The first target behavior that we're going to look at is clap hands. Clap hands is an imitation task and one target behavior that a young student named Nathan is working on. Here's the operational definition. Clap hands is defined as the student moving both his hands together to make palm-to-palm contact twice, 2 claps. This must occur within 3 seconds of the teacher's instruction. The teacher's instruction is her saying, "Do this," which is paired with her clapping her hands twice as a model. The clapping sound needs to be audible. Now, usually as part of an operational definition, you may have a second part that details what a child might do that doesn't count as clap hands. So here are some non-examples. The student does not clap hands if the child's hand clap does not make any audible noise, even if the student's hands appear to make contact. Hand clap does not occur if the student touches his fingers together, but the palms of his hands do not make contact. Hand clap does not occur if the child makes more than 2 hand claps in a row as part of his single response, if the child claps his hands on his lap or any other surface like the floor, or if the student holds his hands together. Okay, now you have a very complete and helpful operational definition of clap hands. Let's look at video clips of this target behavior. This clip is an accurate example of clap hands. So watch for all the important features of the definition: following the teacher's instruction, do this, plus her model of hand clap, palm-to-palm contact between his hands, the student's response within 3 seconds of the instruction, and the audible noise from both of the claps. All of those things will be present in a true occurrence of this behavior.
Do this.
Did you see all of the critical clap hands features? Now, following the teacher's instruction and model of a hand clap, the student clapped his hands, made palm-to-palm contact between his hands, and you heard an audible noise for each clap. Now let's look at a video clip that shows you a non-example of this behavior. At least one of the definition's features will be missing. See if you can figure out why this is a non-example.
Do this.
Well, what did you notice? The student clapped his hands more than 2 times. Well, what about this next video clip? Can you tell if this is an example or a non-example of clap hands?
Do this.
Did you think it was a non-example? Well, if you did, you're right. Nice work. This was not an occurrence of the behavior because the student clapped his hands on his lap which was actually listed in our handy-dandy non-example section of the definition. All right, one more. Example or non-example?
Do this.
Well, did you think Nathan did the behavior correctly according to our definition? If you said yes, then again, you are correct. That was an accurate example of the target behavior. Clapped within 2 seconds, made palm-to-palm contact, and we heard an audible noise for both claps. Now, if you want to go back and watch any of these video clips, feel free to do so. But let's take a look at another target behavior and compare the definition to what we see a student doing. The next target behavior is pouring. Joey's working on pouring liquid from a pitcher into an empty cup. Now here's the operational definition of pouring. Pouring is defined as Joey holding the full pitcher in front of him with 1 or 2 hands, with at least one hand grasping the pitcher's handle and tilting the pitcher to fill or partially fill a cup. Joey must start this action immediately following the teacher's instruction. And the teacher's instruction is, Joey, please pour the juice, and she'll place an empty cup in front of him. Joey must not make any spills. Well, here's a true example of Joey pouring. Now watch for him to follow the teacher's direction, hold the pitcher, tilt the pitcher, and transfer the liquid.
Joey, please pour the juice.
Well, now let's look at a non-example of pouring. Can you tell why it's a non-example?
Joey, please pour the juice.
Well, this one was pretty clearly a non-example. Joey picked up the pitcher and he tried to hand it to the teacher. He did not demonstrate the skill as it was defined. Now look at this next one.
Joey, please pour the juice.
Well, that was a little bit trickier. What do you think? Well, that was actually a non-example because in the definition, one of the criteria is that Joey grasp the handle of the pitcher with at least one hand. In the video clip you just saw, Joey held the pitcher with both hands, but neither hand held the handle. So that video was a non-example. Here's one more of Joey's responses. What do you notice?
Joey, please pour the juice.
Well, I think you know whether that was an example or a non-example. Now, in the next segment, you're going to be doing what we call an interactive exercise. This exercise will give you a chance to practice watching for the occurrence of target behaviors using the operational definitions provided to help you determine whether the behavior did or did not occur as it was defined. All right, here's what you need to know in order to complete this interactive exercise. In the first exercise, you're going to see a series of examples and non-examples of Nathan working with Anna on what we call rolling the ball. Your job is to decide whether each clip meets the operational definition or not. You're first going to see the operational definition of rolling the ball in a blue box in the middle of the opening screen. Carefully read that operational definition. And when you understand it, click the Begin Exercise button and the first clip will play. Watch Nathan's behavior. When the clip is complete, you'll be asked whether or not Nathan rolled the ball to his teacher according to the operational definition. If he did, click the Yes button. If he did not, click the No button. The exercise will give you feedback based on your answer. And if you forget what the operational definition is, you can see it anytime by clicking the Show Operational Definition button. The video will pause automatically, show you the definition, then let you click OK to continue the exercise. For the first behavior, rolling the ball, there are 8 clips you need to go through. And as I said, you'll get feedback after each clip. Now this is important for you to know. You have to pass this first exercise in order to move on. Well, how do you know if you've passed? If you didn't, you'll see feedback at the end of the exercise telling you that you need to do it again. If you do pass, the exercise will tell you and you can continue. Now, once you've passed the first exercise, you'll get a second one. The behavior you'll be working with is Joey handing a notebook to Anna. The second exercise works just like the first one, with one important exception. You won't be provided any feedback on how you did until the end of the exercise. Why? We want to see if you've really mastered how to observe behavior based on an operational definition. Don't worry, you'll be able to take the second one as many times as you need to, but you must pass that second exercise to finish the unit. If you find that you're not passing the second one, I would highly recommend that you go back to the first one for review. Okay, are you ready? Let's get started.
Roll the ball to me. 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 Joey, hand me the notebook. 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 Hand me the notebook. Hand me the notebook. Joey, hand me the notebook. Hand me the notebook.
Well, let's review what you've learned in this unit. Target behaviors are those behaviors or skills that we are targeting for change or for teaching. Before we ask whether a student is learning or not, we must first provide precise definitions of what we expect the student to do. These are known as operational definitions, and your job is to match what you actually see a student doing or saying with the operational definition that's written. Now, why does all this matter? Well, the reason that we use operational definitions and careful observation is to ensure that we as behavioral educators accurately determine what a student can and cannot fully do. So we need to know if a student has truly learned the skills that we're teaching. And how do we know this? Well, we know this when the student can consistently demonstrate and perform a skill without any help. When he can, a next level, more challenging skill can be taught. And this is how learning occurs for all of us. I mean, we don't learn how to multiply before we learn how to add, or we don't learn how to read words before we've learned the sounds that letters make. You would not teach a student important skills like these and settle for an outcome that is sort of correct or almost correct or, well, it's close, because you'd be setting that student up for failure in the future. Now, in the previous units, we've mentioned the importance of taking data to make decisions about how well treatment is working. Data collection involves some very specific strategies. So in the next section, you're going to learn how to measure and collect data on the target behaviors that you observe when you're working with your students.